These days it's perfectly normal for a well-received TV series to be succeeded by a feature film. However, back in the 1960s this was far less common. It is therefore a testament to the popularity of Thunderbirds, created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, that the series spawned not one, but 2 theatrical releases. Before we begin, be warned this video will include spoilers. The first of these 2 films was titled Thunderbirds Are Go. Not to be confused with the 2015 television reboot, also titled Thunderbirds Are Go. For the one person out there who isn't aware, the film takes its title from the phrase characters often use when international rescue springs into action.
Thunderbirds Are Go!
The film was released in the UK on December 15th, 1966, between the original broadcast of the Season 2 episodes Ricochet and Give or Take a Million, the latter of which served as both a Christmas special and the series finale. However, one need hardly be familiar with the series to enjoy the film. The official Thunderbirds timeline has long been a subject of debate, with various sources conflicting on when the series is actually set. For example, the date on Jeff's newspaper is clearly the 19th of June 2066. Later in the film, the calendar in the billiards room on Tracy Island initially shows the date as Friday, August 3rd, which would place the film in 2068. However, the 2 dates seen moments later, Friday, July 22nd and Friday, September 2nd, both place the film in 2067. It is generally accepted the film opens in 2065, before jumping forward 24 months to 2067. The series' main cast all returned for the film, including Jeremy Wilkin, who would replace David Holliday as the voice of Virgil Tracy in the show's 2nd season. Grandma Tracy and Carano are notably absent from the film. Interestingly, the members of International Rescue don't actually appear until nearly 20 minutes into the film. The organization's nemesis, the Hood, also returns. In fact, the film features one of the rare occasions a member of International Rescue comes face to face with the villain.
Keep quite still, Doctor. There's something wrong with your face. He's got a gun.
I should allow yourself 10 seconds before coming through this door after me. Otherwise, you might get your head blown off.
This was actually Scott's second encounter with the Hood, as he confronted him in the Thunderbirds 1965 episode, The Abominable Snowman. Another notable encounter was in the episode Desperate Intruder, when the Hood interrogated Brains. However, the film sees the character apparently killed off.
I don't think there's much point in looking for survivors, Parker.
No, m'lady.
More on that later. The cast's natural performances breathe life into the puppets, and cause you to forget that what you're watching isn't actually real. This film began a trend of focusing more heavily on the youngest Tracy brother, Alan, a trend which continued in the film's sequel, and especially in the live-action film in 2004. Both this film and its sequel were directed by David Lane, who had previously directed multiple episodes of the television series. Thunderbirds had always been cinematic, even on the small screen. Lane's direction really showcases that. Personally, I believe any series making the leap to the big screen should reflect that transition in its scope and ambition, which is probably one reason why I actually enjoy the infamous Star Trek the Motion Picture. Say what you will about that film's pacing, you can't deny its ambition. Supermarionation does have certain limitations, most notably the puppet's inability to walk convincingly. The film cleverly conceals many of these shortcomings with strategic editing and inventive setups. The film is well edited, with each scene flowing into the next.
Okay, Paul, stay where you are. Conserve your fuel. I'm coming up right behind you.
Although the series was produced in colour, the rarity of colour televisions in households at the time meant the film was the first opportunity many viewers would have to see Thunderbirds in colour, which makes it slightly ironic that the Red Planet is portrayed as grey. The film incorporates as many of the Thunderbird craft as possible, In fact, with the exception of Thunderbird 4, all 5 play a role in the story. Towards the end of the film, Brains travels as a passenger aboard Thunderbird 1.
Maximum speed, Scott. We're gonna need all the time we've got.
The only other time Thunderbird 1 had been seen to carry more than one person was in the episode Cry Wolf.
You boys okay?
Sure are, Mr. Tracy. Wow, this is great.
Lady Penelope's Rolls-Royce, Fab 1, is seen using its hydrofoils, first introduced in the episode Lord Parker's Holiday, to pursue the Hood out to sea.
Learning hydrofoils now, milady.
The car is actually seen driving off the exact same pier in said episode. However, the hydrofoils were first mentioned in the audio episode introducing Thunderbirds, which served as a prequel to the series, and was adapted into a television episode as part of the Thunderbirds 1965 project in 2015. Fab 1 was also seen travelling on water in the 2004 live-action film. In that film, the car could also fly, which it is shown doing in Thunderbirds Are Go, during Alan's dream sequence.
Why, we're flying.
That's right.
The film's plot centres around the spacecraft Zero-X, and its inaugural mission to the planet Mars. The model is visually impressive, and certainly feels cinematic. It looks as though it was specifically designed for the widescreen format. 2 different size models were used during filming, the larger of which was over 2 meters long. Following the film's release, the Zero-X crew continued their adventures in their own weekly comic strip published in TV21 and later Countdown. When developing their next series, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, the Andersons decided to include Zero-X as a way to link the 2 shows. The Martian Exploration Vehicle, or MEV, appears in the first episode, The Mysterons, where it plays a small but pivotal role in setting up the series. I remember as a child being traumatized from seeing the Hood's foot get trapped in Zero-X's elevator control. And the Martian rock snakes still freak me out. That said, I was also too scared to watch either Muppet Treasure Island or Chicken Run in their entirety, so... Thunderbirds composer Barry Gray returned to score the film. Gray's music was a central element of the series, and its sense of scale was a welcome addition to the film. He composed a suitably grandiose theme for Zero-X, first showcased during the opening assembly sequence. Much like Kirk's journey to the Enterprise in Star Trek The Motion Picture, the sequence is long, and by today's standards, could be considered unnecessarily drawn out. However, Gray's music, coupled with the impressive miniature work, helps to make the sequence engaging. Contrastingly, his score for the Mars sequence is incredibly minimalistic, which creates so much of the scene's atmosphere and tension. Of course, the film makes liberal use of the Thunderbirds March. The closing credits play over a live performance of the theme by the band of the Royal Marines. Next time you watch the film, make sure you read the credits carefully. In addition to flying cars, Alan's surreal dream sequence also features cameos from Cliff Richard and the Shadows.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we present the biggest star in the universe. None other than Cliff Richard Jr.
The group performed the incredibly catchy song, Shooting Star.
A shooting star will shoot you, and Mars will go to war. The man in the moon will jump on you if you don't love me no more.
Several scenes were shot but later cut from the film, 2 of which had direct links to the series. The first scene sees Jeff giving a television interview regarding International Rescue's involvement in the second Zero-X launch, broadcast live by the Trans-American TV network. Intercut with this was a scene where the Hood telepathically contacted his half-brother Kirano from his jungle temple in order to learn International Rescue's plans. While this mystical ability was never explained, the Hood had made use of it on multiple occasions throughout the series. Unfortunately, because this scene was cut, Kirano no longer appears in the final film. Another scene showed Lady Penelope and Parker, along with Fab 1, travelling to the United States aboard a Fireflash airliner. Various Fireflash airliners had appeared throughout the series, most notably in the very first episode, Trapped in the Sky. Sadly, footage from these 3 scenes no longer exists. However, an establishing shot of the Trans-American TV network was used in the Joe 90 episode International Concerto. Although the popularity of the TV series had inspired the film's creation, it may have ultimately been its biggest obstacle. Viewers weren't accustomed to seeing TV series made into films, and therefore weren't compelled to go to the cinema to watch something they felt they could already see at home. Nevertheless, I think this was a mostly successful, highly entertaining transition to the big screen. Despite the disappointing reception of Thunderbirds Are Go, a sequel was commissioned. This film was given the far more intriguing title, Thunderbird 6. The film is very much a standalone sequel. In contrast to its predecessor, the film is clearly set in 2068. As with the previous film, the series' main cast returned, with Keith Alexander replacing Ray Barrett as the voice of John Tracy. Grandma Tracy makes a couple of silent appearances, however Kirano is once again absent. Brains is given a more prominent role than usual. He even receives his own International Rescue uniform. Unfortunately, he spends most of the film coming up with various designs for the titular Thunderbird 6, all of which are rejected by Jeff.
Oh, that's all right, Mr. Tracy. I just love having my designs turned down.
It is rather convenient to the plot Jeff instinctively knows the new craft is needed, despite the 5 pre-existing Thunderbirds showing no signs of insufficiency.
I'm sorry about this, Brains, but I've got this feeling, and I know I'm not wrong. We desperately need a Thunderbird 6.
The villainous Black Phantom bears more than a passing resemblance to the Hood. In actual fact, the character is a redressed version of the same puppet, which has led many to theorize that the 2 characters are in fact one and the same, despite the Hood's apparent death in the previous film.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons had introduced a new generation of Supermarionation puppets. These puppets were far more realistic looking, with correctly proportioned bodies and less caricatured features. Initially, the filmmakers did consider redesigning the Thunderbirds characters to match this new style for Thunderbird 6. However, they instead decided to mix traits from both generations in order to maintain continuity with the series and previous film. Personally, I'd have been interested to see what the new generation Thunderbirds characters would have looked like. The film infamously features the only example of Supermarionation puppets raucously laughing. Once you've seen the scene in question, you understand why it was never repeated. As was common in Supermarionation productions, a number of the background characters seen throughout the film are reused puppets from previous productions, including Thunderbirds Are Go. The evacuation of the missile base reuses previous vehicle models from episodes of Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, and Joe 90. The film features more live-action inserts than most Supermarionation productions, except of course the Secret Service. Shots of Alan's Tiger Moth combine miniature work with live-action footage. The two techniques blend together remarkably well. While certain transitions are noticeable, others are much harder to spot. The scene where Penelope attempts to land the plane on a highway was partially shot on the M40 motorway in Buckinghamshire, which had been completed but was not yet open to traffic at the time. The live-action elements weren't limited to the film itself. As mentioned on the Jerry Anderson podcast during the Fab Fact segment, model Penny Snow toured Britain in the summer of 1968 dressed as Lady Penelope to promote the film, along with a replica of Fab 1 which had been built to promote Thunderbirds Are Go. Early in the film, Jeff lists off the existing Thunderbird craft.
Now, let's have a rundown on the International Rescue Craft. At the moment, there are 5.
Not only is this sequence reminiscent of the series' memorable opening, it also provides viewers with a refresher, as the series had been off the air for nearly 2 years by the time this film was released. In actual fact, the Thunderbird craft don't feature heavily in this film. Thunderbirds 3 and 4, for example, are entirely absent from the narrative. However, International Rescue is central to the plot. The film centers around the maiden voyage of Skyship 1, an airship designed by Brains using the alias Mr. X for the New World Aircraft Corporation. The airship's interiors feature some very creative set design. The design of the engine room, for example, leads to a visually interesting shootout, with both parties having to repeatedly wait for a clear shot. Many of the locations visited by Skyship 1 had previously featured in episodes of the series. Unfortunately, Fab 1 was presumably destroyed along with Skyship 1, as the car was still in the airship's hold when it crashed. The other new vehicle in this film is Alan's de Havilland Tiger Moth, which is of course eventually dubbed Thunderbird 6. First introduced in 1932, the design would surely be an antique by the film's 2068 setting.
Don't tell me they're going to try a rescue with that thing. They must have got it from a museum.
You're dead right, Mr. Foster.
Virgil's line,
"I've got a tiger in my tank,"
refers to an advertising slogan used by Esso in the UK during the 1960s.
Get new Esso Extra and put a tiger in your tank.
There is a very subtle reference to Zero X in one scene. This film is notably more light-hearted than its predecessor. Initially, it does seem to be following a similar plot structure, simply substituting Skyship 1 for Zero X. However, while Thunderbirds Are Go had been an epic science fiction adventure, Thunderbird 6 distinguishes itself as a globe-trotting thriller. Though the series occasionally tackled espionage-heavy plots, in episodes such as The Man from MI5, it never felt like Thunderbirds at its best. The film clearly takes some inspiration from the James Bond films. The decision to have Alan, Tintin, Penelope and Parker represent International Rescue on Skyship 1's maiden voyage would seem to contradict International Rescue's strict policy of secrecy and anonymity. The film is also surprisingly violent. In addition to its trigger-happy body count, one scene shows Thunderbirds 1 and 2 open fire on an unknown group of would-be hijackers without provocation. This is supposed to be International Rescue, after all. However, the climactic rescue is both exciting and tense, as the downed Skyship 1 teeters atop an interceptor tower. Barry Gray also composed the score for Thunderbird 6. In keeping with the film's lighter tone, his theme for Skyship 1 is far more jovial than Zero X's more bombastic fanfare. The Thunderbirds March is also used more sparingly in this film.
Well, stowed the crows.
Gray strategically reuses a number of recognisable cues from the series.
There's a tower ahead. We're gonna hit it.
How far away is it?
I don't know.
About a quarter of a mile. I'm coming up.
The film does feature a few glaring errors. Footage of the Sydney Opera House shows the building still under construction, despite the fact it would have been open 95 years by that point. When Scott warns Jeff of Skyship One's impending collision with the interceptor towers, he says,
"You'd better alert all emergency services down on the ground. It's a missile base about 5 miles east of Dover."
5 miles east of Dover is the English Channel. Granted, Skyship One is seen over open water moments before the crash. It is also possible the base is located on some kind of fictional man-made landmass. Perhaps most amusingly, the coordinates given in Penelope's fake distress call,
International Fix System 2404, reference E,
are the same ones given as the projected crash site of 0X in the previous film.
0X's present position is International Fix System 2404 on a heading of 143 magnetic.
The two locations aren't even remotely close to one another either, with one being in Africa and the other the United States. A few aspects of the film don't hold up today.
Tintin, Alan wanted to travel to England in an unconventional way. Well, I've organized that, but it's going to be a long journey, and not exactly the way for a young lady to travel in this day and age. You are traveling by scheduled airline.
But, Mr. Tracy, I want to travel with Alan.
Now, Alan leaves tomorrow, and you leave in 2 weeks' time. Understand?
The film was less well received than its predecessor, and ultimately proved to be the final Thunderbirds production made by Jerry Anderson. While perhaps not the franchise's best offering, it's far from its worst. I was pleasantly surprised to see Thunderbird 6 included alongside the other 5 international rescue craft on the official Thunderbirds 50th anniversary poster. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this franchise in the comments. Which film do you prefer, and why? If you liked this video, why not give it a thumbs up? Maybe share it with a friend. Or an enemy. Either way, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more content here on Channel 73.